Mr. Man, Australia. Mr. Lazy, Australian made. Mr. Lazy lives in the outback, which is a hot place, but the birds don't fly slowly and don't fall out of the sky. The grass grows all right, but sometimes it needs a prune. Even the trees grow fine, and you know what time everyone gets up in the outback? Well, they get up in the morning, but not the afternoon, thank goodness. And the clock goes ticking all right. It doesn't go slow all the time. And no one can be slow like a turtle. Anyway, this story starts with Mr. Lazy, asleep in bed. He likes to sleep in, but we sometimes like to get up early. He opened his eyes, yawned, yawned again, and went back to sleep. Then he did the same thing again. It was 11 a.m. and he went in the kitchen to make his breakfast. Actually, it was morning tea time. He put the kettle on to make some tea. It takes a while to boil, and so does the toast. It never gets burnt there. Once he puts it at the right minute. While he was waiting for his kettle to finish boiling and his toaster to pop, Mr. Lazy went into the garden of his staying house he lived in. He sat down on a chair, and you can guess what happened next. That's right. He yawned, and yawned again, and went to sleep. Suddenly, he woke up with a jump, which is something that doesn't happen very often to Mr. Lazy. And the reason he woke up with a jump was because of the noise. "Wake up!" said the noise. "Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!" There were two ladies standing in front of him. "I'm Mrs. Busy," said one of the ladies. "And I'm Mrs. Bustle," said another. "Come along now," said Mrs. Bustle busily. "We can't have you sleeping all day," added Mrs. Busy, bustling Mr. Lazy to his feet. "Who are you?" "We're Other Bustle and Busy." "Oh, come on now. We haven't gone all day, but no time for brunch," said Mrs. Busy. "Or ifs," said Mrs. Bustle. "There's the leaves to rake, and the floor to clean, and the sticks to saw for kindling, and the sheets to wash, and the ties to pump, and the plants to draw, and the same food to cook, and the dresses to mend," added Mrs. Busy. "Oh dear," groaned Mr. Lazy. "All of this I have to rake, clean, store, wash, pump, draw, cook, and mend. Oh, I don't like to get rushed off my feet, but he had to do them. Anyway, it was kind of strange this day. The other Bustle and Busy set him to work. raking and cleaning and storing and washing and pumping and drawing and cooking and mending. Not to mention all the fetching and carrying. Oh, Mr. Lazy. Now, they said when he'd finished, it's time for a walk. And off they set on the longest walk Mr. Lazy had ever been on. Mr. Lazy is one of those people who never walks when he has a chance of sitting down, and never sits down when he has a chance of lying down. But this day he had no choice. They made him walk for miles and miles and miles, until he felt his legs must be worn right down to his body. Poor Mr. Lazy. When they arrived back at his house, Mrs. Busy said, "Right, now for a run." "Oh, no. When I click my fingers," said Mrs. Bustle, "you got to start running as fast as you can." Mr. Lazy groaned a deep groan and closed his eyes. Mrs. Bustle clicked her fingers. Mr. Lazy, poor Mr. Lazy, started to run, but his legs weren't getting him anywhere. He opened his eyes and looked down to see why, and the reason he wasn't going anywhere was he was sitting on a chair in the garden, and there was no sign of Mrs. Busy or Mrs. Bustle. It had all been a terrible dream. And the cake was the kettle finished with the boiling. Mr. Lazy heaved a sigh of relief. Dunk, glug. And then he had his breakfast, thinking about his dream. But this time he didn't want to get that dream again. He thought while eating and drinking